Live in the USA in Technicolor, it's the Sabby and Jaybe show, coming to you shortly. Welcome to the Sabby and Jaybe show. I am your host, James Fauntleroy, one of your hosts. Sabs, good to see you.
What's going on, JB? I think you should make that part of the intro.
Probably should. Good to see everybody here. The Sabby and Jaybe show is here on Revolutionary Blackout Network every single Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also find Sabby on her show tonight at 8 p.m.
That's right. I have Garland Nixon and Margaret Kimberly are coming on, so it should be pretty cool.
It's gonna be awesome. That's a fire duo there. I cannot wait to hear from them. Also, guys, if you guys have not already, go ahead and give us a like on the stream because that helps us out to be able to reach more people. You know what to do. Go ahead and do the damn thing there. So thank you very much for that. And also don't forget to share and subscribe because these are facts that we're trying to cover. We're trying to get more people engaged, especially in what's going on in the world around them so that we can have more awareness about what our system is and how it works. So that you guys can do there. Also, if you haven't already, you guys can join our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. Gives you email notifications whenever we go live like this, or we have any clips that are uploaded. So you guys have that there. And if you guys like to get in touch with us, you guys can email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. Got any news stories or words of encouragement? Go ahead and send us some. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you so very much there. Person and who is waiting? Are you ready to go? Give me a thumbs up.
What's going on, y'all? What's going on? I'm like, shit, you don't need
Oh my goodness.
here. What am I here for?
Rome, brother, so good to see you. How you doing?
Oh, I'm
What's
doing
up,
good.
bro?
I'm doing good. What's going on? I'm still recovering from Chicago, believe it or not. I'm still exhausted, so I just been chilling. That's all.
I believe it, Rome. I saw the pictures. I saw some of the videos and everything. So I know you guys did a lot of work out there.
Yeah, it was a lot. Even just getting out there, it was a hassle, you know, with all this probation bullshit. But we made it work. Everybody got what they needed, got back home, and you know, we chilled out. You know, I'm happy Nick made it back home too, because that was a hell of a drive. I think his was like 10 hours or something like that. So.
Oh yeah, from that's right. Kansas City to Chicago. That is about 10 hours. Yeah,
that was hop skip away.
But it was good to see, Rome. It looked like some people came out to help. In the pictures, some of the people I saw, it looked like they were volunteering.
Yeah, we had RBN, we had Care Party, Tour for the Poor out there. We had RBN members, viewers that came out there. Devin came out there with his whole family from Seattle to help out. So that was dope. His mother, his grandmother, his dad, they was all black radicals. That was dope. And of course, we had some Latino people come around. They up in Chicago now, but it was beautiful, man. Whole diverse of people. Gave out tens of thousands of diapers, a whole bunch of food and clothes. We left a lot behind because, of course, we couldn't take it with us, but it was beautiful, man. Can't wait to do it again, but I know I'm not going. I was just telling Nick this. I'm not going back on the road until the library is fully functioning and open. All I got to do is finish the kitchen and the bathroom, but I want to make sure everything is done before I get back on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to do.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm doing this for the guest. Just making sure that we have them squared away.
Cool beans. Well, we have the back to school event coming up in August. So we did it last year. We're doing it again this year. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. I actually did I was volunteering with Real here in Orlando for their mutual aid. PSL actually came out to also help. There was doing back to school supplies, which got completely cleaned out on Sunday, and then we were able to also give out meals as well as groceries, clothes, shoes, toiletries, all those different things. So I just want to give a shout out to Real and PSL that were out there on the streets with us in my neighborhood, just doing what we can for the people, because ultimately there's a lot of people who are suffering in this system, and so it is important that we get out there. And so, yeah, I'm proud of them and the work that they're doing. And then you also have organizations like the Florida Palestine Network that are doing amazing work. In fact, right now, they're actually doing a emergency protest in downtown Orlando as we speak. I wish I was out there, but of course, I had to be here. But they are doing a protest as we speak in downtown Orlando.
Wow.
That's what's up.
Yeah. It's because of the starving that they're doing in Gaza, and so they did that. Yeah.
I saw there was a message that went out about that there was going to be an emergency protest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's dope. I seen in Spain. Was that Spain? They had blocked the boat from coming from Israel. It was a whole bunch of Israelis. They blocked them from coming in. So, it's dope to see the solidarity and the movement still going on all around the world, man. Because people of Palestine definitely need all eyes on them. I think the moment we look away and just look back 1 second, something big is going to happen. So we got to keep our eyes and ears on this.
Well, I just saw that the handler, I don't know if everyone saw this, that their communication has been cut.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Like, we're trying to keep an eye on that too. It's so many things going on at one time. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So while we're at it, before our guest comes in, let's say hello to a couple people in the chat while we're at it. We have Sean coming in first saying Sabby and Jaybe best duo to be. Yeah, Brown Bunny coming in saying serving top tea realness. Thank you so very much. Jay says Rome. Yes, Rome is here. All right. We have Roger Meadows saying the dynamic trio. That's right. The terrific trio. That's what I like to say. Sean says, "Oh damn, what up, Rome?
What's going on? People look at me like, oh man, we got a Pokemon in here. Like, what the hell is he doing here?
Pokemon." We have Marlo says a Greek island. All right. Yes. And so I'm just checking. I think our guest is having some technical difficulty with getting onto StreamYard.
If she's using a Mac, JB, she's gonna have to use Google Chrome. If she's trying to get in, yeah.
So
it's gonna be. It's always something with StreamYard. I'm telling you, StreamYard and Zoom is always something, but we're gonna work it out. Slimy Show, what up?
Yeah, I feel like it. What do you call it? I feel like with StreamYard, they keep making changes, but it's like they don't announce that they made changes until after they made them. Like they don't prepare you for it.
Yeah, they don't say, oh, in this many days we're gonna be switching, we're gonna be doing this particular thing, and so unfortunately that's the way it goes. So yeah. So that's why that's the technical difficulties going on right now.
Dang, that sucks. I'm still laughing at the damn video I sent you earlier, JB, about Trump.
Don't get me started.
The South Park. Is this the South Park episode?
I think it's the one where Donald Trump is making all these homoerotic comments about men.
Yeah.
It's Yeah, Trump is I don't know. Trump is quite a character right now.
That shit is hilarious, man.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hold on, if y'all don't mind, we can play it for our guests get in. Play a little
Sure.
bit for the guests get in.
I don't think there's any copyright or anything like that, so I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's just Trump talking.
Might have to mute the Ave Maria part, but that's probably about it.
Oh yeah. All right.
I'll kiss every guy, man and woman. Look at that guy, how handsome he is.
They say Trump was born to be a gay man.
I'll kiss him. Not with all enjoyment, but that's okay. But Arnold Palmer was all man. And I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it. When he took showers, the pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God. That's unbelievable. I have to say it. Isn't it? He calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me president, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy. Very successful, very rich. I wouldn't know we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? Look at the muscles of this guy. Look at that guy. You in the beautiful white shirt. Would you look at this guy? Holy mackerel! I'm looking at him.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. The whole thing is hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, I was like, oh, and it goes on for like 10 minutes. It's like 10 minutes of Trump just saying some of the most wildest shit that MAGA would be like, if any gay person say it on their Twitter or their TikToks, they'd throw a fit. But Trump saying, hey, I guess it's okay. Nobody paid attention to what he actually saying anyway. Look at this guy. The guy with the big muscles. That's crazy.
Oh my God.
Oh man. Yo, it's crazy, man. But yeah, I'm happy. I want to see what I know that back to school program, back to school giveaway about to be. Yeah, people need it. So it's about to be bonkers. I know it's about to be a whole bunch of people lined up out there, especially for them damn book bags and pencils, pens, papers. Like, man, I had one to the dollar store like a couple of days ago. Man, I seen how much a notebook costs now. I'm like, ain't no way. Who the hell is affording these notebooks? I remember when I was in school, notebooks was like 50 cents, something like that. They like $5 now.
Yeah, you could get. We used to get the they were the little black and white composition notebooks.
Yep.
And we had to have one for each. If I remember correctly, we had to have different colors for each subject, but they were very cheap. Not anymore though.
We need somebody to start stealing them things, drop them off at the library. We dish it out later. It's man.
When we did the back to school donation last year, one of the things that they were requiring students to get were headphones, like the little earbuds.
Yep. They
were requiring them to have that. I was like, students have to have earbuds now?
Like, we don't listen to the teacher? Like, dang, okay.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I was like, what do they need that for? But yeah, like that was one of the things we had to get. So I don't know. Like it's very different.
It's probably for the shooting coming from the next class over. Dang.
Oh, Zoya. Yes. Zoya remembers. Shout out to Lisa Frank Notebooks.
Yep. Man, I used to have so many books of raps and plots, inventions, and stuff like that. I can't even afford to write down my thoughts no more. This is crazy because I don't like typing on the phone when I'm doing stuff like that. I still like to write, but man, that stuff is so expensive, man. I'm like, I know these new parents going through it because I'm going through it, even buying all this stuff for the kids, school clothes, and even the uniforms. They are outrageous. They want hundreds of dollars for a public school uniform now. I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, that's another thing too. There she is. There she is. I don't know where JB's at though.
Right. Hold on. Let me get him back on.
Oh, there he is. Okay. All right.
All right.
Any thoughts on Hogan? Shit, throw something on the grill.
Okay, so we can get back to that in a little bit. Our guest is here to be able to have this conversation. Is everybody ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So we have with us journalist and activist, Miss Ann Garrison from Black Agenda Report is going to be talking to us today about what's going on with Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray. Miss Ann Garrison will be joining us as we speak. This is going to be a wonderful conversation, and I personally am here to learn and go look at this from an anti-imperialist perspective. So good to have you on, Miss Ann Garrison.
I'm getting, oh my God.
Oh, there you go.
Yep, you're coming in now. Can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but if you can, I had a little more trouble there but I'm going to go into my Google Docs where I have some notes. I took some notes about this because I've been studying it for so long that I could go off in all kinds of directions about it. And I jotted down some notes to try to keep myself on track. So let me just get to those notes, which I lost track of in the chaos here. I've never seen a message like that. Like message suddenly said, turn on your camera. And I never turn my camera off, but okay, so here I am. And let me see if I can see myself. Yeah, okay, there I am. So I can get oriented now. Okay, so I'm here because I asked for a chance to respond to inaccuracies in one of your podcasts, which was headlined, Ethiopia Intent to Destroy Tigrayans, Western Imperialism from Middle East to Africa. And I'm sure this was well intended, but it's a very complex subject. And so it's easy to be led in the wrong direction by all the propaganda that's out there. There's plenty of Western imperialism in the Middle East and Africa, as there is everywhere. This segment just didn't get it right. It actually played into a Western imperialist narrative about the 2022 Northern Ethiopian conflict. It's a black on black violence narrative published in The Guardian with the headline, quote, rusted screws, metal spikes, and plastic rubbish, the horrific sexual violence used against Tigray's women. Now, this war, the Northern Ethiopian conflict, sometimes called the Tigray War, but more accurately called the Northern Ethiopian conflict, was a war between Black African forces, but Tigrayan forces have been a long-standing U.S. proxy, and the Western media constantly portrayed Tigrayans as the only victims. They're what Noam Chomsky and Ed Herman called worthy victims because they suited a Western imperialist narrative. Okay. I went to Ethiopia and Eritrea. And in Ethiopia, the war wasn't taking place in Eritrea, it was taking place in Ethiopia. But I saw people who were suffering horribly because of the violence of Tigrayan forces who had invaded Amhara and Afar regions. I went to both of those. I saw people in horrific refugee camps, one refugee camp with 45,000 people in it and children dying every day. Not enough clean water. They were terrified of a measles outbreak. I talked to people who'd run all the way from the top of Afar province to the southern end, from the north to the south. One woman who'd given birth along the way. There were people who had just fled east into the desert, and nobody knew where they were. All up and down the Central Highway in the Amhara region, I saw IDP camps, and I visited some horrible IDP camps, both in Afar, which I was talking about before, and in Amhara, in northern Amhara region, where people said they had fled from these Tigrayan forces who had taken everything they had. So it was not, this was not just a war against the people of Tigray, which is how the Western media portrayed it. And like I said, they were the worthy victims. Okay, now this article in The Guardian doesn't include a single word about US and European military presence and interests in the region. And it's most fundamentally an attack on Eritrea, which has defied Western imperialism ever since it won its independence in 1993. Most of all, it blames Eritrean soldiers for these horrific rapes. Now, before we go on about that, let's just talk about a few of these US Western interests in the region that are wholly left out of this story and out of similar attacks on Eritrea published around the same time. Eritrea is on the Red Sea, right across from the Houthis in Yemen. Sudan and Eritrea control the southwestern Red Sea, south of Egypt. Sudan and Israel have been hostile for decades. And whatever you might say about their last and current leaders, Omar al-Bashir and Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, both have said that they stand with Palestine. Sudan is reported to be offering Russia a military base on its coast. I don't know if this is true, but I find it credible. In any case, they're not going to offer the US or Israel a base on their coast. Eritrea has no foreign military bases on its coast, and it refuses to collaborate with AFRICOM, the US Africa Command, or any other US, EU, NATO security architecture. Say more about that later. 15% of the world's trade, including 30% of its container cargo, pass through the Red Sea, as does 12% of its oil. As we know, the Houthis have been attacking cargo ships associated with Israel in the Red Sea, and the US has been bombing them back. And that, I'm not sure what the current state of negotiations between the US and the Houthis is, but it's part of the ongoing theater of war here. Around the corner on the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran could block off. Everybody would suffer, including Iran, but if pushed to that extreme, Iran could block off the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Ethiopia, which neighbors Eritrea, I wish I had a map. I didn't have time to create a screenshot of a map, but
it's okay.
Did she freeze?
Recently, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Moshe Saar to talk about further collaboration. And Ethiopia is one of the states now discussed as a possible destination for refugee Palestinians. Now, I have to say one thing about that. Given the situation in Gaza, I almost don't know how to think about that. It's hard to think about whether it's collaboration or compassion or both, because they seem to have no other option but to stay there and die. Now, Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki has rightly criticized the United Arab Emirates for playing a malign role in the Horn, particularly in Ethiopia and Sudan, and the UAE, US, and Israel are aligned. The United States, France, China, Japan, and Italy all have military bases in Djibouti. It's hard to imagine how this works out, but they all have military bases in Djibouti, a small former French colony right at the southern mouth of the Red Sea. And just below Djibouti is Somaliland, a secessionist state of Somalia on the Gulf of Aden that is so eager for state recognition from the US that it can't do enough to collaborate with the US militarily. Now, I don't claim to fully understand how these tensions and strategic postures are playing out or how they will play out. All I'm saying is that they're there, and any rational narrative about the region should take note of them. So now getting back to the rape story, there may be some truth there, but there were 5 combatant armies in the northern Ethiopian conflict: the Ethiopian government forces, the Amhara Special Forces, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, that means the Tigrayan forces, the Afar Special Forces, and Eritrean forces. Rape was allegedly committed by the government forces, the Amhara, Eritrean, and Tigrayan forces. And in all 3 of the regions where the war took place, Tigray, Amhara, and Afar. This report blames it all on Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers fighting in Tigray, most of all Eritreans. And as I said before, it presents Tigrayans, in this case, Tigrayan women, as the only victims. Now, there are so many falsehoods and so much propaganda in the piece that you have to question the truth of any of it. Like I said, there may be some truth to it. I don't know, but it's so full of untruth that I'm very doubtful, and it's part of a whole propaganda wave against Eritrea. Mahmoud Mamdani, that's Zohran Mamdani's father, a Ugandan and scholar specializing in African conflict, has said that rape takes place where men have guns and women are vulnerable. Now, this piece in The Guardian is one of a slew of articles and NGO reports attacking Eritrea in a concerted propaganda effort within the space of a few weeks. Now I want to step back a minute. Before I go into this further, I want to explain a little about how I came to this story. The Guardian report is, as I said, about the 2020 to 2022 Northern Ethiopian conflict, which I reported on starting in 2020 for Black Agenda Report. Eritrea was a party to the conflict, and I traveled to Northern Ethiopia and Eritrea for 2.5 months in 2022, from April to mid-June. And Black Agenda Report founder and editor Glenn Ford was very ill when this conflict started, before he passed in July 2021, and he told me how glad he was that I had taken it up because he wasn't well enough to. Now, someone who hates Eritrea and or someone committed to this singular Tigrayan victim narrative and the particular Black on Black violence narrative is likely to show up here and say, hey, white lady. But Glenn Ford was behind my reporting about this in the last year of his life and was always really supportive. So Glenn was a particular friend of Eritrea, Ethiopia's neighbor, as I've said, which is, as I've said, the fundamental target of this propaganda. He gave a great talk at the Eritrean American Festival out here in Oakland in August 2012. And that talk is available on YouTube under the heading, Glenn Ford speaks at the Eritrean Festival about U.S. intervention and militarization of Africa. So now getting back to your segment, the segment I wanted to respond to. You played a monologue by one woman who never seemed to be identified. And as I said, I'm sure she was well-meaning, and I'm sure she's sincerely anti-imperialist. She just got this wrong in the wave of propaganda coming at us about this. She was expressing her outrage about this article published in The Guardian on June 30th. And it's about grisly gang rapes in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia during, as I said, the 2020 to 2022 Northern Ethiopian conflict, which it's more accurately called that than called the Tigray War, because it was fought in all 3 of Ethiopia's northern provinces, as I've said before, Tigray, Afar, and Amhara. I should explain here that there are more than 50 ethnic groups and subgroups, many with their own languages in Ethiopia. And the country is unfortunately divided into ethnic regions. For many years, for almost 30 years, people had ethnic identity cards, like their ethnicity was identified on their identification. And this just made the ethnic tension worse. There are three groups that was initiated by the Tigray People's Liberation Front. That's the Tigray government. It was called the Tigray People's Liberation Front because they fought in the liberation war. Anyway, it was the Tigray-dominated government that instituted that. And the three groups who have competed for power are the Tigrayan, Amhara, and Oromo. And some sort of reconciliation between these groups is going to have to happen if the country's ever to be at peace. I feel like that's between them. That's not my issue. My issue is what the U.S. does here. And the U.S. has taken advantage of this ethnic division for its own purposes.
Okay.
For 27 years, and made it worse. For 27 years, it backed the Tigrayan forces, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, who were in control of the country. And as Samantha Power moaned, Samantha Power is the former USAID chair, also U.S. ambassador to the UN, special advisor on the National Security Council to Obama, largely responsible for the U.S. bombing, the U.S. NATO bombing of Libya. Anyway, she, after this war started in 2020, moaned that, Ethiopia was an anchor state, meaning it was an anchor state of U.S. imperialism in the Horn of Africa. In 2006, the U.S. persuaded the TPLF, that's the Tigrayan forces, to invade Somalia and overthrow the Islamic courts, which caused chaos and gave rise to the terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Somalia, after state collapse, had struggled to where it had a welcome stability established by the Islamic courts, and the U.S. sent the TPLF in to overthrow them. Now, in that segment, the segment that I was responding to, you also played a clip by another woman. It seemed to be a TikTok video. I would guess she was Tigrayan, though I don't know. And she was expressing outrage about the same article in The Guardian. And she made a bizarre statement that because of indifference to Black lives, The Guardian is the only outlet reporting on genocides in Africa. Well, that's not true. All kinds of prominent Western outlets do that, usually repeating the Black on Black violence narrative and not including the Western strategic interests. Regarding The Guardian, most of its Africa reporting is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is not a benign actor in Africa, not at all. Probably everybody knows that.
Okay.
There are some good writers and good reporting about Africa in The Guardian, but there's also a lot of imperialist trash, like this article that we're talking about. You have to read The Guardian critically, consider who the writer is, how plausible the story it is, given everything else that you may know about the region. The same is true of any of the big Western legacy media, and it's also true of Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. Like they'll get some things right, but often they're used to produce propaganda against U.S. enemies, like particularly recently about the Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
Usually has an imperialist slant, right? Yeah.
Well, sometimes it gets it right. The problem, I had the chance to interview Norman Finkelstein about this, and I told him that I really hesitate whenever I think Human Rights Watch or Amnesty International have something right. I hesitate to cite them because I feel like it's reinforcing them, giving them credibility, and then they may turn out and do something really shameless. And he said he had built a small career on criticizing Human Rights Watch, particularly about Palestine and Israel. But his conclusion was these organizations have a lot of status. When they get it right, you go ahead and recognize that and cite them. When they get it wrong, you say they got it wrong. So I'd say that's the same with a lot of these other outlets. Now, both of the women in that segment said that this was somehow about anti-Blackness, even though it's a Black on Black violence narrative. Western humanitarian imperialists try to frame every conflict in Africa in the simplest terms of Black on Black ethnic annihilation that white saviors have to somehow step in and stop. Yeah, they're still doing. I mean, they'll stir it up and then say, "Oh my God, we have to step in and stop it." They're still doing this long after the Gaza genocide exposed what a fraud it is. And this Guardian article is an example. Most of those pushing this Black on Black violence narrative about Africa are MIA on Gaza.
So, Miss Ann, just one question. Well, really, it's more of a statement, but it sounds to me like the same thing was happening with Afghanistan, where they were saying, "Well, we have to go into Afghanistan because they're massacring the women and the children, and we have to go in there to do regime change, and we have to be the saviors. It's like the West has to be the savior of the people of the global South." And it sounds like this is what that kind of ploy is going on right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. In Afghanistan, we were supposed to be saving women.
Yeah.
I mean, please. And it was, Afghanistan had a secular society that we funded the Mujahideen to overthrow, and causing the collapse of the secular society. And I guess, well, I don't want to go far back into that. The U.S. funded the Mujahideen in, I think it was the 70s or 80s, and ended the secular government in Afghanistan, and now they have the Taliban. Yeah, and the same thing with Iraq. Iraq will this Project Iraq Freedom, Project Enduring Freedom. In Kuwait, they told us that Iraqi soldiers were throwing babies on the floor to steal the occupators. So, yeah. Oh, and of course, we have WMD. You always have to, the U.S. is always going to say it's doing the right thing. And in Africa, this white savior narrative is really dominant.
They always get the playbooks. Like it never really changed. It just changed the country, and they get away with it because Americans are stupid. I'm not holding back. Americans are fucking not only illiterate, can't read, even if we gave them a book, but they are blind to the fact of what's actually going on. So, we see that we went into these wars head first, and we came out with apologies, and nothing else, no reparations, nobody rebuilding these countries that we destroyed, nobody helping with the infrastructure, the waters, get rid of the toxic out of the land. Any of that. Then we forget it because it's 5, 10 years, 20 years later on down the road. And now they're saying, hey, we need to go into Iran because Iran got nuclear weapons. They about to build a nuclear weapon any minute now. So it's always the same old playbook with these people because they don't have to change it because Americans don't read up on what the government is actually doing. They so full of identity politics at the time that they're not even looking at the main course of politics. What is foreign policy? Because foreign policy really shows how a country actually run, who's in control. It's just sad to see that they don't need a new playbook when it comes to Americans, that we just forget about it and just move on, then come back around and say, hey, well, I guess we got to go kill those people. And we're not killing those people for any of these freedoms or democracy, because I always say, even here, there's no such thing as democracy. There's never been a such thing as democracy, and it never will be one here in America. But that is one of the things that they, brainwash you with, thinking that you have a choice in any of this. It's really just an illusion of choice, because where's your primaries at? Where's, like, where's the people, where's the real representation where the young people are, favoring socialism, but you don't want to give us those candidates because you don't want to rock the boat too much. So it sucks, but it's a teaching moment at the same time. So yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the weapons of mass destruction also in Iraq. Like, they always come up with some excuse to try to sell. The West always comes up with some kind of excuse to sell these conflicts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a question to you, Miss Ann,
Sure.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that some people have said that Eritrea is called the North Korea of Africa. Is that a nickname that they typically call it, especially people in the West?
Yeah, they love to call it that. Some people I know like to call it the Cuba of Africa. Eritreans told me they're the Eritrea of Africa. But there are some similarities. They guarantee healthcare and education, like Cuba and Venezuela. Okay, we hate Cuba and Venezuela, so we hate Eritrea. Well, okay, they don't practice Western electoral democracy, at least not now. It's been more or less a siege economy ever since it gained its independence in 1993. So it really hasn't had that luxury. It does practice democracy on a grassroots level. There are labor organizations, women's organizations, and youth organizations which practice internal democracy.
Okay.
One way I just learned as I was reading to prepare for this that it is like North Korea is that neither country instituted mass vaccination for COVID. Eritrea did not, because they established a council, a COVID monitoring council, and never saw signs of an epidemic there. So they didn't see a reason to institute mass vaccination. But of course, the Western press that loves to shred Eritrea went wild with that. I don't know what North Korea's logic was, but they didn't mass vaccinate until sometime, I think, into 2022. They vaccinated some groups of soldiers. I'm not sure what the logic was.
Yeah, because I remember the Biden administration was actually sending out bad dosage, expired vaccines. I believe they sent some to Palestine, and they sent some to another country that we was, running through and whatnot. But yeah, I think it was smart on the DPRK to actually pace themselves on what's actually going on. All these conspiracies about what's actually in the vaccine and where this virus came from. So it was good to pace instead of rushing in head first. And you never know what the powers that may be would do anything to get their hands on North Korea. So I would have moved cautiously also.
Yeah. This just goes to show how sneaky a lot of times the West is when it comes to painting a narrative about countries that don't want to play with the West. They don't want to play ball with the West, and so the West tries to sabotage them. And no doubt, countries like Ethiopia and Eritrea have masses of resources that the West wants to exploit. They want to exploit as much as they possibly can. Plus, also looking at the map, because they know that they really can't combat the Yemenis. Let's go back to the map in Africa.
Yeah.
They can't go against the Yemenis when it comes to.
Great. Okay. I didn't see the map earlier. I'm glad you've got a map. Yeah.
Yeah. So right here in the middle, this is the Red Sea here. And in between, right at the opening of the Red Sea, you have Yemen and Eritrea. So if they can't get control of the Red Sea through Yemen, they're going to try to get it through Eritrea. So at least they can have it somewhat. But if you have Eritrea that is anti-Western imperialism and Yemen that's anti-Western imperialism, there's no getting through into the Red Sea through the Gulf of Aden, meaning that they would have to take their ships and go all the way around, which is about a 2-week extension of a trip around the Cape under the South Africa, and then up the entire west coast of Africa, and then go through into between Portugal and Morocco, and then get into the Mediterranean, and then have to go all the way over to get to Israel. So you're costing them millions of dollars of fuel costs, of paying these sailors that are moving these barges and oil rigs and cargo ships. And so it's draining them dry of money and resources just to be able to do that, because you're literally blocking the passage that makes it a whole lot easier to get to places like Israel.
This is why Trump, admitted to losing the war. Like, I don't care what nobody. Trump admitted to losing the war against Yemen. He they're strong guys. They're the toughest guys ever. Blah blah whatever. No, you got your ass whooped. Y'all had to pull out the big toys. You had to pull out the big toys, and they are using drones and weapons that don't even. It costs something, but it's not as much as the level that we are spending on as far as our military. We have to spend billions of dollars trying to get through Yemen. That's a losing fight. And all the generals in the U.S. have seen it. They came to this conclusion that we would not win against Yemen. And Trump had to back down to get some kind of deals and some kind of boats through, but they are set and locked on, their negotiations of, nobody's passing through the Red Sea until Gaza is free. And I believe that is, that's the bare minimum, like, stop killing kids and you can travel. Like, it's not that hard.
And you also have Sudan right there too. And there's a humanitarian crisis happening in Sudan right now as well.
Right. And the UAE, which I mentioned, which is allied with the US and Israel, is supplying the rapid support forces in Sudan. And they're also after the gold there. The UAE is a really malign force in this part of Africa. They're trying to control all the ports here in Somalia. They'd like to control all the ports all up and down the Red Sea. They're not going to control Sudan or Eritrea. They have been supporting Abiy Ahmed, the prime minister of Ethiopia. It's a very controversial figure. And as I said, funding the rapid support forces, fighting the government in Sudan. And in Sudan, one may have reservations about the government, but they seem to be the forces that are in the right there.
It's just insane that as tiny as Israel is, when we're looking at the map, that it has so much power in that region, and other countries are bigger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, as people say, it's like a big floating U.S. aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, without their big brother, they wouldn't be so tough, and they know this. That's why all politicians, like when it comes to Israel, it is bipartisan to protect Israel, because they know, they need Israel just like Israel needs America. They need Israel to go out there and further push the agenda of Western imperialism into the Middle East. If this wasn't the case, they wouldn't be attacking Syria, Lebanon. They wouldn't be trying to push people into Jordan. And I hate that argument of, why isn't any of the other countries taking these people in? Bro, I'm not leaving my house. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care if something was going on, I'll rebuild, but even if my neighbors had the doors open, like, you can move with us. Like, no, I'm not. I was born here. I was raised there. I'm staying there.
It would be like people trying to push, like telling Rome, because Detroit is so close to it. It would be like people telling Rome or people in Rome's neighborhood that you guys have to leave. We want your neighborhood. We want this land now, and you have to go to Canada. It would, because Rome is very close to Detroit's very close to Canada. So it's like, it would be like telling them that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I said it's hard to know how to feel. I mean, I have a hard time knowing exactly how to feel about countries that might at this point offer refuge to Palestinians who want to leave. I know one Palestinian who got out of Gaza because he was wounded and said he would rather be any place but Gaza. He never wanted to go back. I mean, this is understandable, given what these people are going through, that some of them will want to leave. So how do you feel about countries willing to take them? I said, it can be interpreted as collaboration or compassion or both. I don't quite know what to think of it at this point. Someone should be willing to take those who want to leave.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't stop with Gaza, though, because
No.
Netanyahu has shown us the greater Israel plan.
Yeah.
Like part of that includes part of Jordan as well.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's just it's like it's never going to be enough. Like that's what I hope people understand. Like it's never going to be to the point where Israel's like, okay, well, we got Gaza, we're good to go. That's never going to be enough for them. They're always going to want more.
No, settler colonialism is basically the baby, the baby sibling of imperialism. And so they're going to want to expand further. And I mean, you brought this up report in your reporting as well, Sabrina, is the fact that Netanyahu was talking about liberating, in air quotes, Africa. And so it's like, what part of Africa do they need liberation from? Because ultimately, what's causing Africa to be the way it is right now is really just Western powers having puppet rulers within these governments right now. And we can see how things have gone a 180, especially in the Sahel states like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Look at President Ibrahim Traore and what he's doing in Burkina Faso right now. He's literally turning things around, lifting his people out of poverty because he kicked out the West.
Mm-hmm. And as I said, you have these things like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International claiming that there's genocide against the Fulani people going on in the Sahel states. That's, an example of Human Rights Watch being used to push imperialist policy.
Wow.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that. I know the Guardian can be suspect. Like sometimes they'll get some things right, but then other times it's like, I don't
You have to really critically consider how plausible it sounds and how plausible it in relation to everything else, I mean, they do publish. I mean, there's a really good writer on Africa that I like for The Guardian, Ian Burrell, and they allowed a Rwandan dissident, a political prisoner, whom I've got a 17-year connection to and greatly admire, Ingabire. She's now in detention and is likely going back to prison. But they gave her a spot to publish.
I got a family emergency, you guys. I have to go. I am so sorry. I have to go.
Unholy Rome.
Thanks a lot, Rome.
I didn't know you're unholy Rome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But we're gonna do this again, and it was nice meeting you.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I'd love to talk about this other part of Africa that I'm knowledgeable about at some point. The Great Lakes region, where I was saying this Rwandan political prisoner is now facing maybe going back to prison. I mean, she's been. Well, I don't want to get too off. I get too off. I'm very concerned about this political prisoner at this point, and I would like to do a segment at some point just to her and what she has to do with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we're all hearing about the peace agreement, which is really a minerals agreement. Her story and what she said about Rwanda in the Congo is essential to deconstructing the narrative that we hear. Al Jazeera has also, of all the legacy media, Al Jazeera has given her more op-ed space. But of course, if she goes back to prison, she's already spent 8 years in prison. If she goes back to prison, she won't be able to speak. But that's maybe kind of off topic. But my point was the Guardian once gave her a voice. So I read the Guardian, but I read it critically. And that piece was part of a whole wave of propaganda that came out on June 30th. And on July 17th, Deutsche Welle published a report. Just a sec, I have some notes here about that. They published a report blaming Eritrea. Again, everybody's blaming Eritrea. On July 17th, they published a piece about tensions that could lead to another civil war within Ethiopia, maybe even an interstate war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And the headline was, look at Eritrea's role as new Tigray war looms in Ethiopia. And the intro graph starts with northern Ethiopia is growing increasingly tense 2.5 years after the Tigray peace deal. Eritrea appears intent on sowing instability in the region. And then it goes on to accuse Eritrea in the northern Ethiopian conflict, like this Guardian was, and to accuse it of encouraging Ethiopian separatists to weaken Ethiopia. And at some point last month, I just want to note another key element of this propaganda wave coming at Eritrea is that the Sentry published a piece they called Power and Plunder, the Eritrean Intervention in Tigray. And the Sentry is George Clooney and John Prendergast's humanitarian imperialist NGO that specializes in the African black-on-black violence narratives and white savior narratives. The point of their piece is, again, to blame the northern Ethiopian conflict on Eritrea. It even accuses Eritrea of starting the conflict, which is patently false. So does, well, the Guardian article accuses Ethiopia of starting it when it actually began on November 3rd, 2020, when the Tigrayan forces attacked the National Army in the Northern Command Base in Eritrea. The government responded. Any government would respond to an attack on its army from some breakaway force within its army. But all of the press then implied that the government forces shouldn't fight the Tigrayan forces. The Tigrayan forces should just be allowed to roll down the central highway and roll into the capital, Addis Ababa. And when I was in Ethiopia, and even Jeffrey Feltman, who was the U.S. envoy to the Horn at that time, said that if they made their way into Addis Ababa, it was going to be a bloodbath. And I was staying with someone who said he was out on his balcony with a rifle at the time. So the government fought back, and eventually the government forces with the Amhara Special Forces and the Eritrean forces won the war in 2022, in November 2022. But then the U.S. envoy, then it was Mike Hammer, he swept in and took the Tigrayan forces off to Pretoria for negotiations with the government, making it really clear. He swept in a U.S. jet, a U.S. Air Force jet, picked up the Tigrayan leaders and flew off with them to talk to the Ethiopian leaders in Pretoria, making it really clear whose side they were on, whose side they'd been on all along. And the Western narrative that we'd heard all through that war was Tigray genocide, Tigray genocide, and the Tigray genocide narrative and the hashtag Tigray genocide on X popped up within hours of the attack on the northern forces, in hours of the Tigrayan attack on the northern forces. The war hadn't started, and they were popping up with this hashtag Tigray genocide.
Mm. Sounds like also, well, of course, this has been covered, especially in like the Twitter files, but a lot of times the government will have their hand in pushing certain narratives through social media as well in order to paint a certain idea with different geopolitical issues.
Right.
Exactly. While the United States is, or the West is really the ones that are kind of like the puppet masters, you know, gearing up to make it look like, okay, these people are there's this instability. We have to come in with our benevolent hand to be able to settle things.
Exactly.
And that benevolent hand also includes military action in order to change their representatives of their government, so that the United States has a more pro-Western, America's interests president or prime minister within their country.
Yeah. A number of people have noted, and I think the Sahel states are noting, Eritrea has noted, one of my favorite scholars, Mohammed Hassan, a Somali Ethiopian scholar, has noted that Western electoral democratic forms are easy to subvert.
Mm.
I was gonna say, like, we've seen some of those accounts on Twitter ourselves, right, JB? Like those Twitter accounts that are like, it's usually some of the ones that say breaking news, and then we look it up on our own, and it's not even real.
Yeah, and I've been fooled by it before myself. This is why we have to remain more vigilant on these accounts, because a lot of times they'll be like breaking news, such and such happened, and we're like, that ain't happened.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how much more time we have. We can just, I'm enjoying this. I didn't really want to just talk, so I'm glad you stopped me and started a conversation. It's much more interesting than my just talking. But I do have notes on Eritrea and why Eritrea is always the target, which I would like to get to before we're done. I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, in fact, let's get into that right now, because one of the things that, if you look, I remember looking it up. I should pull it up again. But there is a lot of different resources that Eritrea has. It's not just a strategic. Let me bring the map back up again. It's not just a strategic location, but it's also very rich in resources within that area too. So therefore, it's kind of like an economic 1-2 punch for the West really to take over. But the problem is that Eritrea has really rejected the West. So therefore, the West feels like they're okay. Forgive me for putting it this way in this analogy.
No,
but it's like that annoying dude that's at the door at the club trying to get in, and the bouncers just won't let him in. And the bouncers keep grabbing him by his shirt collar and throwing him out into the curb. And then he keeps trying to get in. Now he's trying to get through the back door. And that's basically what it sounds like what the United States is trying to do to Eritrea. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The worst thing, no, absolutely. We talk about sanctions. Eritrea is subjected to the worst sanctions in the world. The worst thing I can imagine happening here is the U.S. encouraging Ethiopia to attack Eritrea, and somehow assisting that. That would be horrible. I certainly hope it would not get that far. Although there are now headlines every other day saying that there's a war about to start between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Eritrea is subjected to the worst sanctions that the U.S. subjects anyone to. It's no longer subjected to UN sanctions. It was subjected to UN sanctions from 2009 to 2018 on the false accusation that it was arming al-Shabaab, the terrorist group in Somalia. And those sanctions were lifted in 2018 when there was a brief period. We should talk about this too. There was a brief period when Eritrea and Ethiopia made peace, and Eritrea and Ethiopia and Somalia signed a regional cooperation agreement. And for a while, for about 2 years, people were really hopeful. It's like they could have been like the Sahel states, which are moving to regional integration. The Sahel states are now a confederation, moving to be a federation, meaning moving to be a state with a central government, with the 3 states within the nation, like the United States. There was all this promise, and there was a long-standing war. There'd been long-standing hot and cold war between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and Abiy Ahmed actually received the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating that peace. And he traveled to Eritrea, and he was welcomed by jubilant crowds who were so glad that this war was over. Then the Tigray War started in 2020. During that war, Farmajo, who was the hugely popular president of Somalia, was undermined and replaced with a totally feckless U.S. puppet, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed. So this regional agreement that had been the source of so much hope of peace and regional integration, economic integration, cultural integration, it fell apart. I mean, it's the distant past. And then after the Tigray War, Ethiopia started warmongering at its neighbors, Somalia and Eritrea, about its determination to get a Red Sea port. I love Ethiopia. I just don't want it to. I hope it doesn't erupt in another civil war, and that it doesn't invade Eritrea. The U.S. seems more determined to take Eritrea down with sanctions and by encouraging proxy dissidents. There are several, Eritrean dissident groups in the West who actually get very violent. I have been to 2 Eritrean American festivals. They happen every year, and I'm about to go to the next one in Mantika in a week or 2. And both of those were attacked by Eritrean dissidents. In Seattle, they came in, these exhibition tents, they tore down the exhibition tents, they were waving American flags, they set things on fire, they put people in the hospital. And this also happened in Charlotte. I think it was Charlotte a year or 2 ago. And there are Western pundits like this guy, Martin Cloud, who keep talking like these people are heroes. One of the best things about this, though, is that police forces in the U.S. and Canada and Europe have said, no, you can't break the law on our soil and not go to jail. So a number of these people have been sentenced. But at the same time, you have Western media saying, well, they're fighting a dictatorial government. Yeah, they're getting violent. They attack these peaceful cultural festivals. Oh, but they're opposed to a dictator. And that's what this guy, Martin Clout, you can find him on X. He's very active on X. And he actually once encouraged Eritreans to go burn down Eritrean embassies. So there's an attempt to take down Eritrea with sanctions, and also with this encouraging a violent dissident group, and attempting to, like sanctions are always meant to cause so much hardship that they cause the people to rise up and overthrow their government.
Mm-hmm.
And Eritrea is one of only 4 countries who suffer the worst sanctions. They are Russia, North Korea, Eritrea, and Russia, North Korea, Eritrea. Well, Syria was the other one. Syria's off the list. It may now just be Russia. It may now just be Russia, Eritrea, and North Korea, who are SWIFT system for conducting international financial transactions. So they have to find another way to conduct their financial life and to conduct international trade. And also, when mentioned, other countries and corporations, trading entities are afraid to do business with them because they're afraid of somehow running afoul of the U.S.
Well, this sounds a lot like what's going on with Cuba, right? The United States has instituted these sanctions and blockades in Cuba.
Exactly.
And then you have these Cuban Americans that are, some of them are as what the Cuban people who are, pro-revolution. They're what they affectionately call them gusanos, but they are ones who really want a regime change in Cuba. For Cuba to be really more of just another U.S. outpost, similar to what Puerto Rico is, and so they want, and so they're being used as the voice of Eritrea, or the Cubans here are being used as the voice of Cuba to say, "Oh, this is how bad Cuba is." And in reality, they're just being used by the United States in order to conduct more regime change. So that's what it sounds like.
And Robert Menendez was their most powerful ally. Fortunately, he's now in jail. The New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez. He went to jail for corruption. Was, on the level of The Sopranos, they found all kinds of cash and bars of gold in his home. He was acting as an agent of the Egyptian government, and he, when probably the best thing Obama did was lift the sanctions on Cuba, and there was a brief renaissance in Cuba where suddenly there was all kind of trade opened up. With Havana was happening. Even the Rolling Stones went to perform in Havana. And then Biden reimposed the sanctions. And part of the reason was that he was afraid of Robert Menendez, who was head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee before he went to jail.
Wow. Well, just right before you go, I want to also bring this up, just, so that people can also know the background. So I bring this up because this talks about the major natural resources of Eritrea. And in here, it says, as far as minerals go, it says Eritrea has a substantial amount of mineral deposits that are yet to be exploited. The geological work, I'm sorry?
I said exactly. Yeah, it's called the Nubian Shield. They're on the Nubian Shield. Go ahead.
Yeah. The geological works and remote sensing investigations have proved that the country possesses a substantial amount of minerals. Some of the mineral resources in Eritrea include gold, zinc, copper, oil, potash, limestone, gypsum, iron ore, and natural gas. Eritrea's greenbelt, which hosts a precious and base metal, covers about 70% of the country. The number of mineral reserves in the country is unknown, lack to adequate mining facilities. Apart from above mineral resources, Eritrea also has potential for producing ornamental marble and granite. As of 2017, 10 mining companies have been licensed to prospect for different minerals in the country. So it says Eritrea will produce 350,000 ounces of gold annually until it runs out of gold. The potash mine in the Danakil Depression is expected to produce 10,000 tons per day for about 150 years. And so that's just the minerals. And then it talks about the oil reserves. It says the Eritrean Red Sea Basin, which covers the area of approximately 125,000 square kilometers, has a potential for oil and gas. However, only 11 wells have been drilled offshore since 1921, with 8 of the wells having good oil or gas. So far, no commercial deposits have been discovered. In 2008, the government of Eritrea signed an agreement with Defba Oil Share Company to explore several areas for possible oil and gas. So this really is a huge amount of resources that can be exploited. And so this, on top of its location, it just makes it a prime target for Western interests.
Yeah, and like Venezuela, Eritrean can be characterized socialist in the same way that Venezuela can, in that it says that its natural resources belong to the people. That was Venezuela's great sin, was to say that its natural resources belong to the people. Eritrea has done that and said, and natural resources have to be invested in people's future, and they demand a fair deal, like the Alliance of Sahel States, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. They demand a fair deal. The U.S. did everything it could to keep them from developing gold resources in the Bisha gold mine, but it eventually went through. And they're also, like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, building processing plants to escape the extractivist model, by which is the typical neocolonial model, where mineral, fossil, and agricultural resources at a low price and return as finished commodities at a high price. Instead, they are building processing facilities so that they add value there, create finished products that they can exchange within Africa, within the region and within Africa. That's the same thing Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are doing. They also, well, they also, when I was there, they shared with me this great project, the minimum household agricultural project, whereby they provided a number of chickens, goats, various kinds of trees, and you know, what it would take for a family to produce enough food to feed 4 families, which meant that they could free up people who were just subsistence farming to create a more complex economy. Let me quickly, I'm so glad you did that research. You know more about the mineral wealth of Eritrea than I do. I thank you for getting the map and for doing that research on the mineral reserves. You did what I didn't have time to do. I really appreciate that. So let me, before we just sign up here, I wanted to run through my little list of why Eritrea is always the target. Let me see if I can get to it. Okay. I have, okay. First, and this is no doubt especially aggravating right now, unlike most African nations, Eritrea refuses to collaborate with AFRICOM, the U.S. Africa Command, and remains wholly independent of any U.S. NATO security architectures. For a long time, the only other African nation that didn't collaborate with AFRICOM was Zimbabwe, but now, of course, Burkina Faso and Niger have kicked out the French and U.S. forces. Second, as I've said, doesn't mimic the West's multi-party electoral democracy. I don't believe the U.S. really gives a damn about democracy in Africa, but this gives them an excuse to sanction and isolate Eritrea. And of course, electoral democracy is very easy for the West to subvert. Now, third, it's never taken on IMF or World Bank debt. It likens its development model to the tortoise, which is steady, self-reliant, step by step. And President Isaias Afwerki says, aid is like a drug. Keep taking it and you get addicted. And fourth, as I said, it guarantees universal health care and education. The U.S., of course, can't stand examples like that. It's made great strides in eradicating childhood diseases and completely eradicated female genital mutilation. I especially admire them for that. Fifth, it nationalized its natural resources, as I said, demanded fair prices, and it's building the processing plants to escape from the purely extractive trap. And then the last was something else I mentioned before, that it even refused to mass vaccinate for COVID because its National COVID Monitoring Council did not see any signs of a pandemic. Okay, so those reasons for a concerted propaganda campaign against Eritrea, which I think is intensifying now, I think, because of overall tensions in the Red Sea region. That's my last word.
All right. You know what? That was very educational. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no! I hope I didn't talk too much. I didn't mean to just go on. I made a list of the points I wanted to be sure to make. Okay.
Of course. You know what? This is important for us to know, because especially when we have to kind of sift through the haze that Western imperialist nations try to paint try to manufacture consent for us to be able to to get us to be on board with what they're doing to the West. And we believe in sovereignty and personal determination for these countries. And so we should not be trying to determine how they run their country. That's up to them. And so for us to be able to do that, it's just, it's incongruent with the idea of actual democracy, in my opinion. So yeah. So Sabs, what do your final thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I second what you were saying, JB. I mean, it just proves that once again, the U.S. shouldn't be involved in these other countries in their affairs at all. I mean, it just makes things worse, and we have so many examples to prove to that. I mean, we were trying to warn people. Wasn't that last year, JB? Last December about Syria.
Mhm.
Now people
Yeah.
see.
Oh, yeah, Syria, Syria, the sanctions, I said Syria was one of the 4 countries that was excluded from the SWIFT system, this being Russia, Eritrea, and North Korea. Sanctions were lifted on Syria now that they have the founder of the Al-Qaeda affiliate. Just that was, I couldn't help adding. We've been talking about sanctions, and you mentioned Syria, and I wanted to say that those sanctions, those most punishing of sanctions, have now been lifted on Syria.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you so very much for this enlightening conversation. I definitely learned a lot more, especially about the region. I'm going to have to watch this over again because it was very dense and heavy with information. I appreciate you coming on. I've been wanting to have you on for quite some time now. And so I just want to say I want to thank you for coming on and having this conversation with both of us, with all 3 of us, because ultimately, when it comes to imperialism, we have to get out of it. And we're fighting tooth and nail here in the Imperial Court to do that as well. And as well as you're doing it through, your contributions to Black Agenda Report. So if you can let people know where they can find you and what you have coming up next.
Well, I write for Black Agenda Report most every week. And this week I wrote about the woman I talked to you about, the political prisoner in Rwanda, whom I'm afraid maybe going back to prison for some years if she even stays alive. And I'm working on a piece about what we've been talking about for the Gray Zone, about all these attacks on Eritrea, particularly that of this George Clooney, John Prendergast NGO, the Sentry, which is like a cutout of the national security state. So that should, I paused to get ready for this podcast, but that's what I'll be going back to, the piece in the Gray Zone, which should be out, I think, in a week or so.
Amazing. So yes, you're also with the Gray Zone as well. Guys, if you guys have not already, go ahead and follow Miss Ann Garrison on Twitter. Also follow her work on the Gray Zone as well as Black Agenda Report. Amazing reporting and very informative. So I cannot wait to have you back on. Please do not be a stranger.
Okay, thanks a million. And I want to thank you again, Jay, for finding the map of the region, which I didn't have time to find, and for getting all that detailed information about the resources.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
From that.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Okay. I'll see y'all.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Trying to figure out how to sign out here. You going to sign us out? I don't know how to sign out.
It's okay. You can do exit. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to close the window.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So, Sabs, I learned a lot.
I know. And we haven't had many people on to talk about that region. I know Hermela came on during the anti-imperialism summit that we hosted. She's from that region. And we had on another gentleman, I believe, maybe last year, Jaybe. He came on. He was from Eritrea. But other than that, we haven't had too many people on that cover that particular region.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we cover more about Africa. In fact, on my channel next week, I'm going to be having on a guest who is also been on the ground in Africa. I'll be talking to Andrea Rosario Gabori. She actually gave me her memoir, and her memoir is titled How I Survived the Sierra Leone Civil War and Other Untold Stories. We'll be talking to her about the Sahel states, as well as what her experiences in Africa, especially in Sierra Leone. That's going to be a very deep and interesting conversation, especially what's going on in Sahel states, and especially about the AES, which is basically, it's like, yes, BRICS is something that a lot of us are paying attention to, but don't take your eye off the ball when it comes to Africa, because the unification of Sahel states, so that's Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they're actually coming together to create their own block in Africa, which is going to be huge when it comes to resources and economic power. So we'll be discussing that next week on my channel. I am so excited to have her on because she has done some great work out there. And yeah, we're going to be having a great conversation next Tuesday at 3 p.m. But Sabs, you're going to also have some people who are deeply educated on geopolitics. You're going to have Auntie Margaret and Uncle Garland.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Margaret Kimberly and Garland Nixon coming on at 8 p.m. Eastern. So it should be a great conversation. It's always good. And Margaret Kimberly just got back from China too. So
I know, and she didn't put me in her luggage and take me through so that I could be able to visit at least. Let me see Shanghai. Let me see Qigong. Qigong. I'm mispronouncing Chinese cities. I need to go. I just need to go. I need to go.
Yeah. We got quite a bit to talk about. We're going to talk about the protest against that happened against Zelensky, and the pressure that he's getting from his own people, from people in Ukraine. And is this a sign of things to come? You know what I mean? So I think that's important. I'm also going to touch on a little bit about what's going on in New York with the mayor race, because Margaret's in New York City. I want to touch on that and to see what they think about what's happening there with Zoran, et cetera, and how they feel about the energy. Like what is the energy like there for people? Because I'm seeing articles as of recent that says right now the betting odds show he's going to win in a landslide. That's what it says right now.
Is Garland, is he in New York?
No, Garland's in DC area, but Garland, he frequents New York. So,
okay.
But yeah, should be interesting conversation. I'm curious to hear, what they have to say about that, but I'm also curious to hear Garland's perspective too, since like all of us came from that Bernie movement. I'm curious to hear that perspective as to like what's going to happen and what also, like I was saying before, remember there's only so much you can do because the governor has to approve some of those policies. So there's that thing too. But what does it mean? What does it mean for the energy and the future of electoral politics, particularly in New York City, which has been under like a Zionist stronghold for a long time? So
yeah. So guys, if you have not already, Sabs will be live and at 8 p.m. Eastern. So this is what she's going to be discussing later on this evening. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and go over there right after we're done, so you guys can have it set and ready to go. Because once she has that countdown on with that hard beat going on, it's Sabby time. All right, and make sure to take a poll when you go over there. Okay. All right. So I know you have a heart out. I'll be covering some of the comments in the chat, but Sabs, thank you so very much. This was awesome.
All right, Jaybe.
All right. I'll see you in a little bit. All right, everybody. So first of all, what we're going to do before we head out, we're going to thank the patrons. Why? Because they make this channel possible. Boom. All right. So thank you so very much to all the patrons on Patreon. Look, we at Revolutionary Blackout Network are always trying to make sure that we can talk the talk and walk the walk when it comes to doing what you can for your community. We are activists and organizers first, then we're commentators second. The reason why we say that is because we know that this is the way that we help improve the nation. Our actions speak louder than our words. So our actions always have to come first. And this is why we do what we do. Now, Sabby Sabs is also raising funds for her back to school giveaway. So she'll be doing that. She'll be talking about that on her show. Rome and Nick just came back from Chicago. also organizing with Fred Hampton Jr. as well as the Black Panther Cubs as well, and over there. And then I just had volunteered with Real here in Orlando to be able to help do mutual aid for the community here. And so thank you guys so much for allowing us to be able to do this work. You guys allow us to be able to expand our reach as far as the actions that we do. And from the top and bottom of my hearts, thank you so very much for supporting the channel. It means the most to us, okay? Thank you. Let's get to a couple comments in the chat, and then we will head on out. So I'm going to check on the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants. We have a few people watching. They're a little bit quiet, but that's okay because they're just chilling. They're probably eating some popcorn. I hope it's the extra butter. All right. And then let's also check out to see if we have any comments on Rockfin. They're quiet on Rockfin too, but that's okay. We're good there. So let's say a couple of words to some beautiful people who are in the chat. One of the ones, Zoya. Zoya is love. Zoya is life. Zoya says, this is how colonizers manufactured genocide in Rwanda. Cultural identities became legal distinctions. One group was convinced they were superior and received more privileges. What does that sound like? It says, empire always creates chaos. Absolutely. Thank you so very much for that solid point, Zoya. Also, Marlo says, I'm still a few minutes behind, but excited for next week's interview. Yes, thank you so very much. I cannot wait for that. I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay. Thank you so much to James Starks, from one James to another. All right, bruh. Peace and love. Says, great show for the information. Jaybe and Sabrina, another valuable education for us. Please like and subscribe and share for the show. All power to RBN. Thank you very much, Mr. James Starks. Appreciate you. All right. Let's go into here. Julie Anderson. I almost called you Julie Andrews. The hills are alive with the sound of music. Anyway, she says, learned a lot today and didn't know a lot of the situations in that area of the world. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I want to do a little bit more hyper focus on Africa and what's going on there. You know, appropriately, we've been doing a lot of focus on what's been going on in Palestine with the Palestinians, but now I also want to pay more special attention. I still want to keep my eye on what's going on in Palestine, but I also want to direct some more attention to places like DRC, Congo, as well as what's going on in Sudan, and as well as what's happening in, you know, the Horn of Africa, you know, Tigray, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and that area, Djibouti. And then I also want to cover the Sahel states towards the west of Africa, especially in the Ivory Coast and the Gold Coast and things like that. So I want to cover a lot of what's going on there, because a lot of times there is this narrative in our head where it's like, oh man, Africa, they just can't seem to get their shit together. And that point is that, is it really their fault, or is there an influence behind it that makes it so that they can't get their stuff together? Who's putting in people who are more interested in the Western interests than they are in African interests? Because a lot of these people seem to be more focused on Western interests, not African. It's just like how you have Donald Trump. He's more interested in Israel's interests instead of America's interests. It's interesting, right? So that's one of the reasons why I think we start to have more of a focus there and talk to journalists and people on the ground in these areas so that they can educate us more on what really is going on, especially with, you know, the hand of imperialism, not just from Africa, but from France, Germany, Italy, the UK, all these countries that seem to want to control this resource-rich continent. And remember, Africa is massive. Africa is massive. It is the second largest continent on Earth. Okay? Africa is bigger than North America. It's bigger than South America. That's how big Africa is. And so don't let these maps fool you. So that's a lot of resources. That's a lot of people. And so we have to have a focus on where the Western powers are constantly putting their disease-filled, grubby little wrinkled hands in, and focus on that, because a lot of times that's where they derive a lot of their power from, is taking from that area, and leaving the people without the resources that are literally underneath their feet. So that's one of the reasons why I want to hyper focus on that. And I'll be trying to do that more, not just on my show here on RBN, but as well as on my channel as well. That's why I'm going to be having on Miss Andrea Gabori next week. So we're going to be doing that. So I cannot wait. Let me make sure I go here. And yes, Roger, I saw your comment about Rockfin. Thank you very much. You see, Eager says Burkina Faso is the brave heart of Africa. Full support, my Prince Traore. Yes, a lot of people are looking at President Ibrahim Traore, and they're saying he's doing a lot of great things. And then we'll do one more, and then we'll get to the super chat. Amber says, when normal people get complacent and don't vote, what happens is the president is a felon who is found liable for fraud and sexual abuse, and he appears in the Epstein files per her own Department of Justice. Here's the problem, though, Amber. We had two presidents that were guilty of things similar to that. Look at Joe Biden. Look what he did to Tara Reid. Joe Biden definitely isn't clean either in that regard. And then you say, well, Joe Biden wasn't running towards the end. It was Kamala Harris. And yes, Kamala Harris also was one of the people who was in the room and helping with the decision making for continuing this Holocaust that we have going on in Palestine, as well as a lot of the sins and transgressions she committed against Black people within this country in pushing the white supremacist system that we call criminal justice system in the United States. So ultimately, both parties, like we always say, are refuse. They're garbage. They're trash. So ultimately, it's like, yeah. Is Donald Trump and the Republicans trash? Yes, they are. Equally, the Democrats are too. And so, and there are Democrats and Republicans both in the Epstein files. And they all need to be in orange jumpsuits before a judge that's appointed by that people, the actual people. So that's all I got to say. But yeah, thank you very much for that. Let's go into the super chats, and then we'll get into the Rockfin. No. All right. We have W1 says, very important that was covered. I had an Eritrean friend. They were the first modern African country to break away from Western imperialism. This is a fact. And so this is why Eritrea is so important, especially to Western interests. Number one, we covered the resources that's going on. but at the same time, it's also strategically in that zone that is on the that's on the western side of the Red Sea. You have Eritrea that's on the western side, and on the eastern side of the Red Sea, you have Yemen. And so, therefore, if it's being controlled by anti-imperialist countries, both anti-imperialist countries, you ain't getting through to the Red Sea because you can't count on Eritrea, and you damn sure can't count on Yemen. So you're locked out of the Red Sea, which means you got to go all the way around the Cape of South Africa and go all the way back up and then all the way over. And Africa is massive. That's a 2-week trip added to your ETA. 2 weeks. That's how long it takes. It's crazy. So, of course, they're not happy about that. That's why they want to take control of Eritrea. Yes, Rootsy. There's no map created by Western publishers that portray the true size of Africa. No. If you look at Earth from space and look at Africa, oh my. Oh my. And James Stark says the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States, is where a revolution is in progress. Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much for the super sticker. Eager Boxer. Thank you for the. I'm not even going to try to guess which currency that is, but thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Okay, Marlo says left cheek, right cheek, same stank ass. Yep. It needs a bidet. All right, so let's get to the comment on the Rockfin side. We're gonna have this conversation. All right, thank you so much. Share the screen. All right. Thank you for this, Roger Meadows. He says, Minerals America, is that what you need? Is that your excuse to invade other countries? Well, JB, get a load of what I have put in the DM. Let me see. He said, you do what I put in the DM, you'll never have to invade another country again, baby. Don't know what the teaching you in school today, but I always knew because my teacher in 3rd and 4th grade told me that Africa is the second largest continent next to Asia. Antarctica, debatable because the ice keeps melting. Well, I was taught that too. Remember, Roger, I'm old enough. Look, I know I'm moisturized. Anyways, let's get into this. I don't know if I can. Was this from something earlier today? Hang on. I don't know if I can read all of this, Roger, because due to the sake of time, I'll get through what I can because I am over time right now. All right, so let's get into this. All right, so thank you very much for this. Borphine, graphene, alternative lab-grown potential. It says borphine is a synthetic material grown in the lab, is a promising material for next-generation electronic devices, including wearables, like smartwatches and things like that. The wearable devices, including wearables, biomolecule sensors, light detectors, and quantum computers. 2D material advances. Borphine's two-dimensional structure, like graphene, offers flexibility, strength, and lightweight characteristics, making it suitable for applications where traditional materials fall short. Unique properties are Borphine's remarkable mechanical and electrical qualities, making it, including its tunnable band gap, making it suitable use for an optoelectronic devices, sensors, and transistors. And then it talks about applications Let me see. It says comparison to graphene. Well, graphene is well-known 2D material. Graphene may offer advantages in applications requiring great flexibility as it can adapt to various lattice configurations that graphene cannot. Lab-grown diamonds are transforming various industries. These man-made diamonds offer several benefits over natural diamonds. They are more affordable and environmentally friendly. Let's explore how different sectors use lab-grown diamonds. Lab-grown diamonds, also known as synthetic diamonds, are created in a controlled environment. They have the same physical and chemical properties as natural diamonds. The process involves high pressure and high temperature of chemical vapor deposition. And so it goes into the cost effectiveness of diamonds, diamonds in the sky. It says they're cost effective, they're cheaper to produce, eco-friendly, less environmental impact, and consistent quality, uniform properties. Industrial uses of lab-grown diamonds, so electronics. They're excellent semiconductors, as it says here. So their performance electronics can withstand extreme temperatures, have a high thermal conductivity, high power transistors, diodes, and heat spreaders. Their ability to handle high temperatures makes them suitable for devices that operate in harsh conditions, including aerospace and military applications. The high thermal conductivity helps manage heat, improving the performance and lifespan of electronic components. Cutting and grinding tools. Diamonds are the hardest known material. Lab-grown diamonds are used in cutting, grinding, and drilling tools. They provide precision and durability. Diamond saw blades, drill bits, and grinding wheels. Now, I remember that we used to, in culinary school, we actually had a knife sharpener that used diamond dust in order to be able to sharpen our knives. So it is that strong. You can use it on stainless steel. Lab-grown diamonds enhance the efficiency of these tools. They offer a long lifespan and greater precision. This is crucial in industries like construction and mining. The durability of lab-grown diamonds reduces the need for frequent replacement, saving time and costs. Optical devices. Lab-grown diamonds are used in optical devices due to their transparency and strength. They are perfect for high-performance lenses and windows. Applications are high-powered lasers, infrared windows, and optical lenses. Their optical properties make them ideal for devices that require clarity and precision. The strength of lab-grown diamonds ensures the durability of those devices, making them reliable for critical applications. Diamonds have an excellent thermal conductivity. Lab-grown diamonds are used as heat sinks in electronic devices, helping to dissipate heat effectively. So they're used in LED devices, microelectronics, and laser diodes. So lab-growing diamonds essentially are something that you can do. It says, now put that all under a working cooperative business model. Understand the best way to correct foreign policy is to fix your domestic policy. If you empower, I guess you meant if you can end poverty, then you can put an end to the poverty draft, thus depleting the military of bodies. It's nothing new and not a recent phenomenon that Zoomers are not joining the military. This was happening even with millennials from after Bush's Iraq War. How many times have you heard soldiers getting called to go back to war 3 and 4 times? So how do you do this? Well, run ballot initiatives that offer free total attendance of public colleges and universities, charter and make it free vocational trade union training institutes, as well as information technology training institutes offering free paid apprenticeship and internship programs. Also offer the decommodification of housing as well as single payer health care. And then you go over these. Due to the sake of time, I'm going to have to get going. But also talking about biofuels, fuel and feed, pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, wastewater treatment, pigments, fertilizers. Algae are also used in production of bioplastic as well as raw material for various chemicals and 3D printing filaments. So that's a workaround. Instead of doing imperialism, you can actually make these things so that you won't have to do imperialism anymore. So oh, thank you so much for this, Zoya. Zoya said, showed me this as well to show the true size of Africa. Thank you very much for being on it, Zoya. I've seen this before, but I don't think anybody's ever. I don't know if everybody's ever seen this. Let's see, but let's take a look before we head out. Okay, so it says Mercator misconceptions. Clever map shows the true size of countries. So, yeah, that's the actual size of countries compared to what they're shown as. So it's always shown as being bigger than what it is. So that's the actual size of the countries. So that's how big Africa is in comparison. Africa barely loses any size, while all these other countries, especially the European ones, they become smaller. Meaning these countries are not as big as projected. And they always make Africa look like it's the smallest, it's smaller than what it is. When in reality, Africa is massive. And you also got to take into account that when it comes to the United States, I'm sorry, not United States, when it comes to the world, everybody needs to realize that 71% of the surface of our planet is water. Meaning most of our surface of our planet is water. If you look at the opposite side of the world, it's just water, ocean. So, yeah. And so the other 29% is land. Yeah. Well, so technically Asia is still the largest, but it's not the largest by a lot. Right? So the difference between Asia and Africa is not as big as people make it out to be. But thank you very much for that. All right, so everybody heading out. Thank you so very much. Tune in to Sabby in about an hour. I will be live for the Jaybe show on Sunday. And then also I'll be having will I be able to have a reading up tomorrow? I got a doctor's appointment. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. Plus I got a gym tomorrow, so I gotta do that too. Anyways, but definitely Tuesday I will be having that conversation about Africa. So we'll be doing that as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. I'm gonna head on out. I should do this. This video too. It was such a beautiful video, and I think that we should end on something that's wholesome. Why not, right? Let's end on something wholesome because, and also, did you guys know that Sabby used to play the clarinet? Right? So, shout out to you, Sabs, if you're still watching or you're still listening. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. Water yourselves. Water your plants. Leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. And please make sure to be very critical, especially of Western outlets and what they present, especially in the global South. Because a lot of times they be on some bullshit. And also to countries that are rejecting imperialism, give them a little bit more grace because they're fighting against some major powers. All right. Mwah, forehead kisses. I'll see y'all in the next one. And you guys take care. Have a good one. And good night.